Scott Frost has to move UCF forward, but he's going to need a quarterback to do it.
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every single day. Joining me as he does every single week is my good friend, Andrew Glucov, purveyor of all things UCF. You're the most UCF person I know, Andrew. The most UCF.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
That's a great thing to be the most UCF person I know. Look, after Scott Frost's recent comments about taking the wrong job, it's time to move UCF forward. And today I want to kick the show off talking about what things UCF needs to accomplish this summer to move forward. We're going to talk about one of those things being the QB race and how important it is that they have a starter and how soon into fall camp. Let's start with moving UCF forward. Talk to me a little bit, man. What do you think UCF needs to do this summer to start moving the program forward? Look, Nebraska is in the rear. I mean, you're gone. I don't want to hear anything more about Nebraska. I want to hear about what's the plan to make UCF a prominent program again.
Well, there's a few things going on. And first thing, it's really the Nebraska fans that are mostly butthurt about those comments for obvious reasons. Other than some bulletin board material, it's not going to affect anything. The kids are gonna, they're gonna forget about it. They're gonna move on. It's not gonna be a lingering issue for Scott Frost. It was just a blip. It made for some good, discussion material, but from a material standpoint, I don't think it's going to make a difference. Winning cures a lot of things. It masks a lot of things. It's going to be a bit of a rough start. So what's interesting, I just want to throw this out here. We talked about multiple times throughout last season and this season about the Big 12 media poll, how Arizona State was selected last. They finished first. Because of that, the conference opted not to have a media poll. There's unofficial stuff out there, but there actually is no Big 12 media poll. But most of the talking heads out there have UCF in the bottom three of the conference, between 14th and 16th. On the surface, that's a fair assessment. There's a lot of question marks. This is a brand new squad. They didn't have as many resources as West Virginia is to reload. So moving forward, you're going into summer. You have to plug in your holes. We talked quarterback. We've talked quarterback a lot. Well, they're still trying to figure that out. And even Scott Frost said, none of them have truly stepped out and ahead of the others in this competition. That's why he hasn't named anyone. And you can take that one of two ways. Because, one thing about Scott Frost is he can tell you a lot and not tell you anything. That's just how he operates. I remember when he was first round, he would talk, but he wouldn't really say anything. And this one, it's one of two things. One, you have multiple guys who are looking pretty sharp, but no one's distinguishing themselves. Or it's vice versa, where it's no one's looking all that great. And as a result, not distinguishing themselves. So that's probably the biggest place, because then, as he said, sooner or later, you want a guy, and the sooner the better, because you need to start coalescing the rest of the offense around the quarterback. Obviously, running backs covered. Wide receiver, you got a lot of new faces, still have to figure that out. Offensive line, a lot of new faces, still have to figure that out. The linebacking core, you got some new faces, got to figure that out. So you have a lot of position groups that need to solidify your two deep. In particular, get your starting lineup figured out. Obviously, you're going to have rotations, but time's ticking. You're mid-August. I'm sorry, mid-July now. August is right around the corner, and UCF has a game in less than 50 days. So you need to start figuring this stuff out. All the while, continue to push the recruiting angle. UCF has a lot of work to do, and one of the best ways to do it is get those freshmen. And you can pitch the fact that UCF has a lot of areas of need, and those freshmen have a bigger opportunity to compete for playing time early than if they go with some of these larger, more established programs.
Yeah, look, you talked about the QB race, but one of the things that he said during the spring was he talked about guys kind of learning the language. And you got to wonder how much progress did they make learning the language of Scott Frost this spring and headed into the summer. Now, like I know, the players have to take the onus of studying the playbook in the summer, getting immersed in what UCF football will be under Scott Frost. But the clock is ticking, as you mentioned. Like, we're mid-July, Andrew. Like, football is going to be played in like 45 days. So they're going to have to get going on this process, and they're going to have to show significant progress, I think, here over the next couple weeks if they're going to be ready to start fall camp, finishing up races, and then eventually transitioning to week 1 game prep. Look, progress is going to have to be made, and a lot of progress is going to have to be made very quickly. But a part of that progress is going to be figuring out who your QB is. We're going to talk about how that race fleshes out right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. If you are going to see a game this year, Game Time is the place that you want to be. Look, we've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. I personally am in a city right now where a Beyonce concert is going on. There are a dangerous amount of people in cowboy hats, and there are grown men taking pictures with Beyonce cutouts. But hey, when you want to see a concert, you want to see a concert. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Fleshing out the QB race, they've got to figure out who the guy is going to be. Is it going to be Cam Fancher? Is it going to be Tayven Jackson? Is it going to be Jacurri Brown? Who's going to be the guy? And who fits this system the best? Scott Frost did not take a QB to media days. And he kind of made it clear that nobody had done enough to stand out. What's your level of worry that no QB stands out at this point for UCF?
Well, I mean, I've seen seasons where UCF didn't have much of a quarterback and they still ran someone out. I'm going to throw a wrinkle into this all. There's a guy out there that could potentially play a spoiler role, and that's Jake Retzlaff, the guy from BYU, who is not entering the portal, but withdrawing from school. And that's an important thing to distinguish, because normally if you enter the portal, you would not be eligible this year. The portal's closed. However, if you withdraw from school, those NCAA transfer portal restrictions do not apply, and you can go somewhere else and be immediately eligible. This dealt with the issue between Wisconsin and Miami, not too long ago. So, I mean, that could happen. If you read, there was a CBS Sports article about, schools that may land him. And he's, UCF's one of those dark horse schools because they need a quarterback. This guy is proven. And while Tayven Jackson does have a little bit of starter experience, and he's probably the presumptive guy to be starter, he hasn't really done a whole lot to really distinguish himself. Got stuck behind more talented players. So Retzlaff could be a dark horse that could maybe find his way into a Scott Frost offense. I don't know.
Jake Retzlaff transferring to UCF would break the internet. That young man had some issues going on. It looks like his issues are starting to work themselves out. I don't want to speak on it. Very sensitive topic.
The legal side is gone. That's done. This is now a school issue, and this is a BYU specific school issue. Other schools do not have the same rules BYU has.
Fair enough.
So that would not be a problem at a school like a UCF or many of the other schools out there who are looking for a quarterback last minute.
Andrew, what are the deadlines? What deadlines would he be under if he were trying to get in and be eligible to play in the fall?
Well, I mean, you need to be in before the semester starts, really. So, I would expect something within the next, couple weeks to kind of flesh itself out, because he knows he needs time to learn an offense and whatnot and get acclimated. And this, the teams, know as well. It's gonna take a little bit of time, but he doesn't want to lose this season. Obviously his time at BYU is pretty much done. I don't see the school walking back on their policies. That's their thing. Okay, that's fine. He's got to do what's best for him, and getting enrolled at another program as soon as possible is his best move.
I agree. Look, could he be the type of quarterback with the experience that he could walk in and start immediately? Yes. The answer to that is yes. This is a guy who doesn't need football is football, and he doesn't need a lot of time to adapt. He can get in there and definitely mix it up. If you're Scott Frost, what message does that send to the rest of your QB room if you take Jake Retzlaff? Does that create some controversy in there, do you think?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, the guy that sends a message to the guys currently there saying, look, you guys aren't doing enough. Which if they have to bring in Retzlaff, it's the obvious case of, hey, you guys aren't doing enough. But in this case, it's not about holding hands and hurt feelings. It's about winning games. And Scott Frost has been recruiting, based on honest assessments. This is where a case where an honest assessment would be needed of, hey, we just haven't really been, turning the corner, and we have an opportunity to bring in a guy who can help us win games. And if he's winning games, we're all benefiting from it because we're winning games. And if players don't like that, they'll hit the portal and leave after this season. Or if they have a red shirt available, they'll use it. This isn't personal. This is business. And as we know, college sports is now more than ever has become a business. So you have to do what's best for the business, which is put the best players out there to win games. And sometimes that means going back out on the market and finding better talent.
Andrew, I once had a conversation with a Power 5 quarterback that had a relationship with former Oklahoma quarterback Jason White. And he said Jason White told him right after he won the Heisman, he said they're always trying to bring somebody in that's better than you. So you can never really get comfortable, because you got to realize these guys don't care if you just won the Heisman. If there's somebody who can come in and play better than you, they're bringing that guy in. And I thought that was a very powerful statement from a guy who owned a Heisman trophy, for sure, as the best player in college football. But great advice, I think, to give to young QBs to say, hey, look, you always have to somewhat be looking over your shoulder because there's somebody who wants your job.
I mean, it's the nature of the beast. Look at a guy like Jalen Hurts, was doing well at Alabama and got replaced and had to go somewhere else. Granted, he won a Heisman over at Oklahoma, but still, he was one of the top quarterbacks out there and was replaced. So, I mean, no one is safe. I mean, anyone can be replaced. There are no one that is irreplaceable, especially in college where, your time there is limited to begin with. So you're always, on the hunt for the next guy, and that next guy might be better. It might be worse. I remember when, Brandon Wimbush transferred to UCF ahead of the 2019 season. I was not a fan of the move because UCF had Darryl Mack Jr. and I thought they were the same player basically. Then you had, freshman Dylan Gabriel who got a chance to play and ended up taking over. It's about, looking for the next best guy and putting the best guy out there. This is not a game for soft egos. Either you take care of business or you're going to find yourself riding the pine. And that's no different than here.
Yeah, I agree with that. Small correction though. he did not win. Jalen Hurts didn't win the Heisman. He was a Heisman finalist at Oklahoma, though. That 2019 season was a great season for Oklahoma. Joe Burrow won the Heisman that year.
You're right, my mistake.
But, I mean,
My bad.
one of the greatest single seasons we've ever seen from a quarterback. But in any other year, he might have been a Heisman winner if there weren't for Joe Burrow. But your point being taken, you're talking about an NFL MVP caliber quarterback that lost his job in college and bounced back. So look, man, I think that's a perfect example. Tua supplanted him not because he wasn't good, but they felt like they could do better. And I mean, you can argue whether they actually did better or not, but it is the nature of the beast. Look, fall camp is almost upon us. UCF is going to have to name a starter. In my opinion, the sooner the better. We're going to talk about that next on Locked On UCF. How far into fall camp do you go if you're Scott Frost without naming a starter? And again, I'm going to ask you, what's your level of freak out if you're a week into fall camp and no one has separated themselves? Somebody's got to rise to the top of the pack. And if you're UCF, you have to mold your offense around that guy's skill sets. So, somebody's going to have to take over this thing and quickly once fall camp gets here.
Yeah, someone's going to have to do it. And, my first reaction is Tayven Jackson's job to lose. He was brought in with the anticipation of starting. We all know that Jacurri Brown's been putting in a lot of time. A lot of videos of him were hitting the internet of him just doing work, different, with different, trainers and whatnot. But doing great in practice and doing great in games are completely different things. So UCF's gotta settle on someone soon, because you need to build that you got to gel everything together. You got to build that trust. You got to build that chemistry, especially with the wide receivers. They're starting to cut it a little bit close. But I don't want to say I have faith. But I believe that they will make the best decision. It's just more the fact of when do they make the best decision, and they're running out of time. It's got to be soon.
It does have to be soon. Look, Tayven Jackson is my bet as well, too. I think that he's going to be the guy. We'll see. There are people that feel, though, Andrew, that Jacurri Brown is not completely out of this race, and he is remaking himself under Scott Frost and Mackenzie Milton. What do you think about Jacurri Brown? Would that be the shock of the century, that technically the incumbent comes from the back of the pack after all the guys they brought in and holds on to the job?
What's interesting is, look at the development of Mackenzie Milton from his freshman to sophomore year. Freshman year, he was the best guy in a bad batch. I mean, there weren't good quarterbacks in 2016, and Milton had a lot of, technique flaws. As a freshman, he needed to work on, he got happy feet. He pushed the ball so it tended to overthrow. I mean, there was a number of mechanical issues. In the offseason, he blossomed. He learned how to control the pushing. Now, he still had an interesting release, but he learned how to control it. And had a magical run all the way through the end of 2018. In his case, winning 24 games in a row. Obviously the last one, he didn't play due to injury. That in itself is interesting, but I think part of that helps in the fact that he lived it, and now he can try and share that experience and knowledge and practice with Brown and whoever, of how to go from here to here in a single offseason. It can be done. We've seen it done. He lived that life. And the best thing a coach can do is take his experiences and be able to instill it into another athlete.
Yeah, it makes Mackenzie Milton so instrumental in this process. And talking with Dante Carr and Kane Archer, they both talked about the relationship with Milton being instrumental in their commitments to UCF. Early reports are that is something that's just paying dividends for UCF already. You and I talked about the decision to bring Mackenzie Milton being one of the most important decisions Scott Frost has made since he's come back to Orlando. Man, if they're successful at QB this year, I got a sneaking suspicion Mackenzie Milton's going to get a lot of the credit.
Oh, absolutely. And he was one of Frost's first hires, and for good reason. One, he went to the school. He can give knowledge and experience based on his time as a student. A lot of others can't do that. Sean Beckton's a UCF grad, but I mean, he's from a way different era. At least, Milton's from a relatively modern era, being on the team from since 2016, which is, when the grand scheme of things, not a lot has changed in the school. It's grown a bit, but it was already huge to begin with at that point. It's different than when I was there at school 20 years ago. The other thing was he played the same position. He was a quarterback. Sometimes you have position coaches that did not play that position as they're kind of working their way up. He was a quarterback, and he played under Scott Frost, and he has a very good reputation of being very personable, just a good character. I've spoken to him numerous times one-on-one, and I think the world of him as a person. He just very, laid back. He's empathetic, the kind of things you want in a coach, very knowledgeable. And when he was injured and Dylan Gabriel came in, he was able to, kind of be a quasi coach during that time, start to see how the coaches view things and learn that way, which kind of gave him a little bit of a springboard going into his coaching career. I think all these pieces, when you add them up, just, make for a good recipe to develop that kind of relationship you need between a quarterback and a coach to build a winning product.
I agree 100%. Look, Mackenzie Milton has his work cut out for him, but I think he's up to the task. We're up to the task always here at Locked On UCF when it comes to talking UCF sports. Andrew, I want to thank you for joining me today. Guys, thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. For your next listen, go check out our friends at Locked On The Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. You could be the most informed fan in college football by watching The Portal Show. You can find them on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. You can find us here tomorrow on Locked On UCF.